About a month ago, you heard the term habeas corpus. That's what I'm wearing today. And my guest also is wearing that. But I want you to watch this video real quick.
Secretary Noem, what is habeas corpus?
Well, habeas corpus is a constitutional right that the president has to be able to remove people from this country and suspend their right to.
Let me stop you, ma'am.
Suspend their
habeas
right
corpus, excuse me, that's incorrect.
President
habeas
Lincoln
corpus,
used it.
Excuse me. Habeas corpus is the legal principle that requires that the government provide a public reason for detaining and imprisoning people. If not for that protection, the government could simply arrest people, including American citizens, and hold them indefinitely for no reason. Habeas corpus is the foundational right that separates free societies like America from police states like North Korea.
What you saw is not just something awkward. This is where we are today. We cannot agree on anything. You saw two government officials. One has the right answer, but the other one says, no, that's not what it is. When you pick up your phone and Google, and you can see the habeas corpus and what it means. It's for us, the people. Kristi Noem genuinely believes the habeas corpus is Donald Trump's right to detain people, to detain us. So today, I have with me Dr. Katie Gaebel, and we're going to talk about what is habeas corpus, and we're going to go into the history. But before we go into the history, can you define what habeas corpus so that we can help Kristi Barbie Noem know what exactly is habeas corpus?
And can we just all collectively agree on how cringeworthy and as collectively as a country, the secondhand embarrassment? Like I love that I have a shirt that says habeas corpus, but I really need a shirt that says I'm not with stupid.
Yeah,
like that would be great. If I could just wear that when I watch clips like that.
You're like, I'm sorry, the rest of the world. This is not us. I don't know what happened, but here we are.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. So I needed just to put that out there.
No, thank you for that.
Every time I watch that, my body just reacts to that.
No, I hear you.
So habeas corpus literally means I have the body. And so there's a lot that goes into what that means.
Break that down more. We're in America, okay? Yeah. To go further, like in fourth grade, reading level.
And it's a Latin phrase, and it goes back all the way to the Magna Carta. And it is really one of the most fundamental concepts of legal rights that we trace our lineage in America back to kind of the Anglo-Saxon British constitutional rights and human rights. And so the idea is that when someone is arrested or taken into custody, they have the right to know why they're being detained.
Right.
Very, very basic. And the reason why this was so important all the way back to the 1200s, but really became part of the law in England in the 1600s. You can imagine that the king and the queen had absolute power to arrest and detain anyone at any time.
Right.
And during those times in England, we had extreme issues with Protestantism and Catholicism. And so depending on who was in charge at any given time, who was reigning king or monarch, they could arrest the opposing religion and hold them in detention for the rest of their lives without any reason and without any opportunity to appear in front of a judge or magistrate.
Right. And for those watching, I'm going to try to even bring this language down. Have you watched Game of Thrones before? And I'm sure everyone watching this have watched Game of Thrones. Do you know the Queen Cersei, how no matter, what she wanted to do, she just used, like treason as a language to get her justice. And she doesn't care. And, she has a brother named Tywin Lannister, who Cersei hates Tywin so much. And this is her younger brother, but she just hates him because she believes that Tywin killed their mother. So now Tywin is very knowledgeable. He understands the law. So whenever Cersei tries to get her arrested or killed, Tywin will come out and say, no, I demand, a trial. I demand a trial by combat. Because back then, I feel like that's a form of habeas corpus, where Tywin is like, okay, I hear what you said, but I demand a trial. And then he will have a trial. And if the trial doesn't work, he's like, I demand a trial by combat. So he has so many different levels of, because, Cersei couldn't just come in and just, like take him out, because that's what she wants. And she has used that with religion, where she like armed an entire, like fanatics and, gave them a weapon to a point that they had to arrest her herself. Yeah. Which is funny. Yeah. If you watch Game of Thrones, I hope that makes sense. But can you help me connect this to what's happening today? Because one thing that Kristi Noem said was Abraham Lincoln did it, so Donald Trump should do it. Yeah, and again, secondhand embarrassment, cringeworthy, just general lack of historical context there. And of course, that's been taken up by a lot of people to say, oh, well, if it was good enough for Abraham Lincoln, surely we can do this and as Trump loves to compare himself to
yes,
like
for
Lincoln.
Some reason,
Lincoln was
they like to
number one, and then he's number two.
He's number two. Yeah, he's probably in his mind already surpassed Lincoln.
To him, he's like, no, Lincoln's is my
far second compared to me at this point.
Right.
So the short answer is yes. If you do not do your history, like your context reading, and kind of dive into the historical context, Lincoln did suspend habeas corpus, but there's a lot more that happened. So number one, Lincoln did take unilateral action himself, suspended habeas corpus leading up to the Civil War. And part of this, but it was limited to Maryland and a couple other states. And the reason in particular was a case of a man who was a secessionist. So he was breaking away, and there was some type of plot to overthrow the government. And so they arrested him and held him. And a Supreme Court justice at the time said, no, you need to release him, and you can't just enact this. And Abraham Lincoln basically said, no, this is right. This is my right. Then he went to Congress and got congressional approval. And so that has become really the process. And what's interesting about that Supreme Court justice, his name was Taney. Taney was an apologist for slave owners and for the secessionist movement in the South. Taney delivered the majority opinion on the Dred Scott case. And the Dred Scott case, if you're familiar with that, was the case that basically said, no, people who are of African descent, people who are currently enslaved or were former slaves, are not citizens and cannot be citizens. And that was, Dred Scott was actually a case that stemmed from here in Missouri. So love the legacy here in Missouri. But so on the surface, it looked like, Lincoln was creating a unilateral decision. But when you scratch the surface, he's fighting these apologists for slavery, for racism, for institutionalized removal of someone's humanity. And so Lincoln made very different decisions to restore people's humanity than what we see happening right now, to use the argument of removing habeas corpus to basically create people who aren't human and to remove them at any cost from our country.
Wow, that's insane. And I apologize for saying the word insane, but it's just that's the first thing that comes to mind, because I hear Donald Trump compare himself to like Lincoln all the time, especially when it comes to habeas corpus. And you hear how he went about it. This was to fight against people that believe that people like me are not citizens. They don't matter. They're less than human. And he's saying, Lincoln did it. I can do it.
That's right.
And I'm trying to understand, how do we get to a place where there is such a fundamental misunderstanding of history in America? And I'm asking you this because I had a similar conversation on TikTok where I uploaded a video. I was talking about the history of slavery. And then someone was like, why do we always have to talk about this? And then they were challenging me and telling me that I'm wrong. And I asked her, okay, well, what is the history? And, she just doesn't have any input, but she just believed that I'm wrong because, I am just over exaggerating the situation. And I remember going off like, you understand that slavery lasted for 254 years. With like just the first month, 15 million people died. And these are facts that are real, but people don't believe. And then, and I try, and I know she's a Jewish woman, so I try to compare that and then help her compare and contrast. Like, hey, today, 2025, we're still talking about the Jewish pain. We're talking about what happened to the Jewish people because it matters. It matters that we talk about it today. Yeah. So the same should apply to us African Americans. We need to talk about this because if you don't talk about it, then it becomes out of sight, out of mind. Because again, there's a fundamental concept of what happened in America and what did not happen. And we're seeing that today in this administration, which I call the incompetence administration. Where do you think we went wrong, number one, to even get him into office? I know you have a lot of opinion on that. To a point that people are even letting go of their right of habeas corpus and cannot even agree on that. Something that's for us, every person in this soil. Yeah.
So, as you were telling that story, I think about some of the concentration camps I've visited in Europe. And the ones that I've been to, I don't know if all of them have this, but somewhere within the concentration camp, there is a sign or a plaque or a memorial that says "Nie wieder," and in German that means "never again." And so there was this concept that in preserving the concentration camps, they serve as a reminder to the systematic dehumanization that occurred, and it didn't just occur during the Third Reich. Like, yes, the millions and millions of people who were killed, who were detained and killed happened during the Third Reich, but it fed off of these very deep-rooted beliefs about the other in Europe. And so for me, the Nie wieder serves as a reminder of those who don't remember history are doomed to repeat it. Right. And it also isn't for me something of, oh, well, that oppression was worse than this oppression. I think we can hold all of these up to say, in what ways is society and am I still contributing to and upholding white supremacy in my own actions? And so that would be my question I'd ask myself if I have a reaction to someone giving me a statistic about how many enslaved people died in America in those 250 years. I would ask myself, why am I denying that or refusing to understand that number? And so for me, and I think we've talked about this, there are 4 kind of fundamental levels of oppression that we can think about. There's ideological, there's institutional, there's interpersonal, and then there's internalized. And habeas corpus and the removal of habeas corpus hits on all of those levels. So we look at this and we can say this is a fundamental constitutional right to anyone on our soil. So we're talking about oppression from an institutional perspective when we remove that. But bigger than that, it's an ideological perspective, right? It's who deserves, who has the right to be treated as a human, who has the right to basic humanity, and who doesn't. And that's where I think so much of this is so deep within us. It's internalized that it's like the air we breathe. We don't even recognize it's part of our cells. And then in the interpersonal oppression, that's where we see a lot of this conflict happen today. We try to have dialogue, we try to have conversations about some of these things. But when these things are so deeply rooted in us, it's very difficult to see past those levels of oppression or power and privilege.
Right. No, yeah, thank you for that. And for me, the reason why I try to show two different examples, because I think there's some kind of sickness in America. And I apologize for anyone who may get offended by that. I'm apologizing because the conversation is we cannot agree on anything. So I'm like trying to break that wall so that people understand that it's not intentional. Yeah. But there's a sickness that's going on in America where people don't hear what the other person is saying. Everyone is saying something just to get a quick point. And you can say, I have an apple. Someone says, no, you don't have an apple. You have a BlackBerry.
Yep.
And this is actually a double joke between Apple and BlackBerry where they were fighting back in the day. But again, I'm calling it a sickness because it is what it is. And I think in order to like address a sickness, you have to talk about the symptoms. You need to go deeper and become a doctor if you can, and be like, all right, I'm going to try to show you an example, and hopefully you can see it in your sickness today. That's why I try to talk about the Jewish experience, as this is something that happened. It was horrible. It was the worst part of human experience. When we are all understanding of that, we know it's wrong, and we talk about it till today. Like it's just wild that happened, that people were around to just look away and not take action. You know, there were systems created to make sure that that's okay. That's horrible. And when you talk about slavery, especially in America, the reason why I'm saying sickness is because the moment you bring it up, people just get either offended or they try to stop you. And then I remember during the George Floyd, a period, calling it period again, I'm trying to make sure I'm using the right word so people understand me and not just attacked immediately. But during the period, I remember I was getting a lot of people reaching out to me because I'm a Black guy. They were like, hey, Abraham, I just wanted to call and just check on you and ask you some questions. I've known you for 20 something years, and now you were calling me to ask me about my Black experience. It was so weird at that time. But then I was so appreciative people were actually taking time. But still, the moment I go into slavery, people get offended. And they were like, can we just talk about the George Floyd thing? I'm saying we need to talk about this. We need to talk about the history, in this sense, the medical records. We need to go back and dissect that and talk about it in order for you to understand how you can deal with it today. Again, slavery happened, 254 years of horrible experiences on my direct, ancestors. I came from West Africa. We have shrines of people that were stolen that are still there. And this is something that my grandma, talks about. My great grandma, who lived into 100+ years, she experienced, she heard stories as a little girl. So I learned more about slavery in Africa than in America, it blows my mind when I first came to US, because I'm like, oh, okay, everyone will be talking about this here. And I like to talk about it. Not even I just felt like it's important to talk about it. But then there's such a pushback, and it's so bizarre to me that I don't understand it. And that's why I'm always trying to talk about it, no matter where I find myself, especially people asking me.
Why do you think there's a pushback from your experience in trying to have a lot of these conversations?
No, thank you for that question. I think it's a huge sense of guilt that a lot of people feel. They just automatically think that it's, when I bring it up, I'm saying it's your fault. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that this has impacted people for generations. Like, I know, a friend of mine whose dad was actually a kid during the segregation. He's very old right now. But so he actually remembers that. So he shares that with his kids. And his son runs a very successful company, but he doesn't even like talking about it because he's like, when I do talk about it, I could lose a client. So again, there's this guilt that people feel. And for example, your dissertation in Germany, they have those little signs that say never forget. Why aren't we not having that in America? Why don't we have a museum? Like, the Trump administration was trying to shut down anything that was teaching about slavery, about the history of what happened. They were attacking it, very intentionally, which tells me that there's an entire half of the country thinks that's okay. That's why they put this guy in there, because everyone know what he wanted to do. Like, Trump was not hiding anything. He was saying, the only thing he was hiding about was Project 2025. He lied about it. And then now he's hanging out with Project 2025 folks. They're in his administration in very important positions. So it's again, to answer your question, I feel like there's a huge sense of guilt that internally a lot of, people in America, especially the white community, have, and they don't want to talk about it. But they want to hear us It's like, how can you hear someone? Imagine going to a hospital and the doctor is like, I don't want to hear about what happened.
Yep.
Let me tell you how to go about this.
Let me tell
Just
you
take
what
aspirin.
happened. Yeah. Yeah.
Take aspirin, go to bed,
Yeah.
drink water, you'll be fine.
Yeah.
Please don't call me about anything. So it's like, that's what I kept getting initially. And that's why I have this huge sense of, belief to keep talking about it. Because to me, I learned so much about slavery back in Africa. And the way that it was taught, it was not like, go and hate people. It was like, this is what happened. This is why certain things are the way they are in Africa, and make sure you have grace.
Yeah.
It's just that simple. We have the same grace for the Jewish community. We are supportive of them, but when it comes to the African American community, it's completely different. I'm just like, we should have those signs. We should have the reminder that we should never forget. These are basic things that we should agree on. Factually, it happened in the past. A lot of people got impacted. Why is it today when you want to talk about it, there's such a huge pushback? Again, I thank you for just listening to me go over this, friend, because it's something that I think about a lot.
No, and I would have a couple of responses. One, while I think on the surface we can say, that because you brought up the Jewish American population is treated differently, we have seen a sharp increase in anti-Semitic acts over, the past 8 years. I mean, I'm thinking about there was someone who went into a synagogue in Pittsburgh like 8 years ago and shot up the synagogue. We see all of these acts. Just a few months ago, we saw 2 people killed in Washington, D.C. One of them,
Missourian.
She was from, was from right around Kansas City. And so I don't believe, I firmly see the correlation between the louder the talk about dehumanization of immigrants and whoever the Trump administration is labeling as the other is getting, so also will the violence towards other people, other minoritized populations. And it privileges people, it gives people a sense of empowerment when they hear their president or the administration say really dehumanizing things about other people.
Very loudly too.
And it gives them like, I can stand up and also go and shoot someone, set them on fire, whatever, because I don't like their beliefs. Your question about white people in America, and I'm assuming most of your conversations are with white
100% normally are mainly white women that would reach out and then ask me.
Interesting.
It's very interesting. Normally, the rejection would happen also around white men. They're like, I'm not a victim, so I don't want to talk about it. So this has nothing to do with victimization.
Interesting.
So yes.
So one thought that came to my mind, and if I had my phone, I'd quickly Google who the leader of Germany was who said this, but they actually talked about collective guilt in Germany after reunification. And this idea that it isn't our guilt to carry anymore. And so we need to let go of our collective guilt as a country. And are you Googling it for me?
I'm giving you solid. But Google is thinking.
Okay.
It says collective guilt in Germany, blah, blah, blah. I can't pronounce this. Bernhard Schilling.
That's great.
Yes. I apologize, Bernhard.
We're gonna fact check me on that one. We're gonna fact check me. And so this concept of collective guilt has been talked about, I would say definitely more in the European context. The American context, like we do with a lot of things, we just put it on the individual. Get over it. Why are we still talking about it? That was, ancestors generations ago. Why aren't you over it yet? And we don't recognize broadly as a country the concept of intergenerational trauma. and what our bodies carry from generations past.
Right.
And again, going back to the 4 different levels of oppression, institutionalized oppression, those things still exist. And I'll give just a quick example. People of color were unable to own land for a very, very long time. And so people who were freed slaves or descendants of freed slaves, they became sharecroppers. So they essentially went back into servitude, but they were free. And because they couldn't own land, but working the land because they had very little access to educational resources, they still largely were not given access to reading, to school systems in the same way that their white counterparts were. Right. And so sharecropping became a way to continue this legacy of enslavement, even though America was like, no, they're not slaves anymore. You're free. Go do whatever.
Right.
And so now we look at agriculture. We look at the percentage of people of color in agriculture. It's very, very small today because they were barred from owning land and the ability to have their own crops and do their own work. And so that has systematically disenfranchised generations of people from growing their own food, being connected to their food systems. And when we do that, we can control people because if we control their food source, we control them.
Oh, and do you remember the name of the German?
I
just
do,
so we can
yeah. So he was
live fact check.
Yeah. So West German president in the 1980s, and he said that collective guilt didn't exist during a 40th anniversary remembrance speech of the end of World War II. And so his name was Richard von Weizsäcker.
So I was very wrong. Thank God we fact checked.
I'm sure, and I think there's a lot of people who have spoken about the collective guilt.
Yes.
Yeah.
But he was the one who
the one that I was thinking of. Yeah.
Okay.
And basically just said, you can let it go now, country.
Yeah, let's move on.
Let's move on. Yeah. Deal with your own individual. If you had contributions to what happened during Nazism, deal with that yourself. But we've moved on as a country.
But the systems probably
system did not move on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like that's what happens happened in America, where they just let it to the people to just deal with it. But then as a country, as a system, there was no healing that happened.
No.
How they've lived, how now Trump and his administration, they're trying to leave everything to the states.
Yeah.
And then I was actually watching an interview about this young TikToker. I think his name is Dan, and he was having a debate with a far right California girl who was like,
if everyone in Alabama wanted slavery back, you'd be okay with that?
Sure. If everyone in the state wants it, go ahead. What do I give a
All right. Well, let's go next topic.
Well,
It's like these questions are so funny.
about that?
These questions
No,
are
we're
so
not gonna
funny
talk
because
about
they're meant
So
to
I
trap you
just-
down.
I'm getting nervous.
I just want to clarify.
Yeah.
You understand that was the same argument that the Confederacy upheld, right?
this is why we should not leave it up to the states. So you can put the same example to just what happened in America. We can let it up to the states. When you have a governor like Missouri here, Mike Keyhole, I'm gonna say Mike, said a bad word, but I know him personally. So if you're watching this, man, very, very disappointing in that guy.
Yeah.
So Mike Keyhole, he's just doing things that no one asked him to do. Going back and unearthing all these things that, like, why are you doing that? Childcare?
Yeah. and I would say it's the state actually decided. We voted on things like having abortion access, having workers' rights, access to childcare. So just last week or 2 weeks ago, the new overtime rule and sick time rule that had gone into effect in Missouri.
People voted for. He overturned. Yeah.
Same with abortion rights. So we did leave it up to the states. And now I want to know, where is that woman from California?
I know, I can't remember her name, but she's a lost cause.
But, when
even Jesus can't help her.
I mean,
she would probably give away her right to habeas corpus
or something. Yeah.
She's going to be like, I will let Trump decide my habeas corpus.
Yeah.
And then one more thing that I want to, point out when it comes to habeas corpus, this past few months, it's become a trend where people, even this shirt, wearing it, I saw people at the coffee shop, they're like, oh my God, I love that.
Yeah.
And then, I asked someone, like, do you know what it is? She was like, I'm not really sure, but then I saw it on the TV. And then she was like, I think it's like due process or something. I'm just like, no. I'm just like, habeas corpus, it gives you the right to due process. Without habeas corpus, you don't have due process.
She had a better answer than our administration did.
No, yeah, she definitely had a better answer than Kristi Barbie Noem.
Yeah.
I'm not from here, so she could probably come from me. But anyway, moving on.
And to go back to what you were saying about
I'm living in Canada right now.
So. Yeah. We are currently in Vancouver.
Yeah. We're like a VPN.
We're in Vancouver.
We're a VPN.
That's right.
We bounce from one location to another. So good luck finding.
So this concept of states. So it's fascinating to me because the Supreme Court, this has been an ongoing issue with the Supreme Court. And you look at Jim Crow laws, and it was a Supreme Court ruling, Brown v. Board. However, it was left up to the states to basically desegregate. And then you look at the state of Alabama, and the governor of Alabama at the time said segregation now, segregation forever. The National Guard had to come in and work to desegregate, to actively desegregate the schools.
Yeah, we need to keep an eye on Alabama.
So
Everyone uses an example.
It's like up
I
there.
don't know what you guys are doing up there, but we need to keep an eye on them. Who knows?
And when it comes to habeas corpus, great idea. Let's leave it up to the states, except for when post-Civil War, one of the examples of when habeas corpus was actually suspended was in 1871 by President Grant, who had to go into South Carolina because the KKK was killing people left and right, and decided that they didn't agree with the end of the Civil War and the freeing of slaves. And so President Grant suspended habeas corpus and arrested hundreds of people, KKK members in South Carolina, because they were going against a federal law and they were causing insurrection.
Yeah. Wow. All the right reasons to suspend it. And Trump is here
I know. So I was like, yes,
actively.
Lincoln, yes, Grant.
Yeah,
and now,
wait, what?
And
Trump.
Then recent examples of like President Trump and I'd say even President Bush.
Yes.
Post 9/11 and the systematic removal of habeas corpus, and only through a Supreme Court ruling were rights of habeas corpus reinstated to prisoners who were being held in Guantanamo Bay.
And then like another thing with the Trump, administration, I don't, especially Stephen Miller.
Sorry, I have a reaction every time.
Like I hear him speak and I'm just like, I think Trump is even tired of that guy. Like, why? I don't understand who hurt that guy. But when he speaks, I watch his interviews and I was like, how can someone get to this level? And then he will be actively having debates with like media personnel. And he says something totally out of the pocket. They're like, well, actually, that's not right. And it's like, no, that's right. That's what's happening. I'm trying. I can't even do it. It's so weird that just the way that they've just, took habeas corpus and just made it into, Donald Trump's plaything. It's like, hey, we're doing what's right for you people, but we're going to do it however we see fit. And to me, that is so scary, especially someone who grew up in a dictatorship. In Gambia, we had this crazy president, which I've talked about here, who just told that he can cure AIDS and gave himself a PhD. I wish I could give myself a PhD.
I know, that would be amazing.
Right? Yeah. And then he did all these ridiculous things, and then he would disappear people to a point that the country had to just said, all right, we've had enough after 20 something years, and then remove him out of office. And it was brutal. It was not fun. Like a lot of people didn't make it during his presidency. It was crazy. Even my grandpa got disappeared for 2 months. No one knew where he was. So this is something that I grew up seeing. And now in America, and I'm seeing people are like fighting about it. I'm just like, habeas corpus is here for you to make sure you have due process.
Yeah.
And even on Twitter, I made a post about it. And so, for some reason, some guy with a profile, the typical profile with the glasses was telling me that I don't know what I'm talking about.
Those
and
are
I was
my
like,
favorite. Yeah.
At this point, I'm so exhausted and so tired. That's why I just put it on a t-shirt.
Yeah.
I make a joke like, if I ever get picked up, I will be wearing this habeas corpus. Hopefully someone takes a picture.
Yeah.
This is me requesting.
That's right.
To
That's right. Please
bring my body to a
yeah,
judge because I don't trust what's happening.
Yeah.
But yeah, again, I do want to just kind of like go into the bright side, for lack of better words,
Is there
into this
one?
entire situation.
I feel like every time we talk, we're like,
the world is ending.
Oh, yeah.
Drop your hats, guys.
Yeah.
But like, let's try to find a bright side here, and let me see how I can frame this question and see
I can't
maybe
wait. Okay.
Katie can help me.
Okay.
So I know there are people that want to, do something good, but they're just lost in their echo chamber. Like, how can we help them get out of that? Or, how can they help themselves get out of that echo chamber? I can always see your eyes going off like they're lost cause. But how can we help them understand that, there are things within the Constitution that is for you. Don't let that go. Don't let Trump decide your fate. Speak up for yourself. Question everything. How can we make sure that we can help those people? Just let's try. We got to be fair to everybody. I guess how can we rebuild at this point?
Yeah.
It's not even a year, and I'm so exhausted with everything going on.
I am too.
Yeah,
and,
but we're trying our best to
that's part of
stay exhausted. Stay in this state of exhaustion.
And I think that's part of
the plan.
The plan, yeah.
It's so hard.
I have no and I'm thinking about my personal interactions and, my own family and how completely broken and lost, I can no longer have conversations with my family. I have almost no relationship with my family anymore.
It's very common today.
Yeah. And it started for me during the first Trump administration when he suspended the opportunity for immigrants to come to the country just like that. He signed an executive order that the Supreme Court actually upheld later on. But I was so sure, in my altruistic, self, maybe naive, that he was wrong and that, I stood up and I said, this isn't right. And I had a family member who was like, it was just like the narrative. They're taking our jobs. My children are suffering because the teachers focus on them and not my children. And there has been nothing unprivileged about this family member's life. And yet they were searching for the thing to blame the other.
Right.
And it was very easy for them to make that leap. And now that family member is very active in very right-wing political actions right now.
Yeah, that's hard. Yeah.
And so, the question of the idea of questioning everything, when you already think it's right, why would you question it? When you already have the leader in place that
tells you what to do, how to think,
why
how
would
to
you
lead.
Question it?
Yeah, that's hard. Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
Now I see why you cannot find the bright light, because you were dealing with it pretty much every day, especially that close a family member.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I do think that there are people who are maybe unsure about how to speak up, that there are people who are angry, who are scared, who are horrified about what's happening, but maybe protesting isn't the way that they feel comfortable showing that. So I do think people finding a way to exercise their First Amendment rights, which for now we still have, whether it's through protesting, through having conversations with people, through recording a podcast, through journaling, whatever that is, finding a way to at least talk about it and share with the broader collective that there are people in this society who do not and will not tolerate these things, no matter what. And there were people in Germany who did not and would not tolerate things. And many of them were the first ones to be killed.
Right. I know. Yeah. I mean, we're seeing it here where like Americans are being detained and, not just don't care whether they're I was actually I just watched an interview of this older lady who just goes to all the courts. She's been doing it forever, and she just goes to make sure that she can help as many people as she can. Very sweet lady, but they grabbed her, they pushed her on the wall, like all of her wrists are bruised. This is a 70-something-year-old lady who just goes to court to make sure that things are fair. As her duty as an American, she does that. And then I'm just like, whoa, this is insane. Yeah. Because this is something that I used to see in Gambia, where you'll be hanging out in the corner, a white car pulls up and just rush, grab people, throw them in the car. They don't care who it is, a great grandma, a young kid, and just disappear them. And we're seeing that in America. And to me, it breaks my heart whenever I see American citizens that are just like okay with it. They're like, we voted for this. Yeah. Like I keep seeing that on Twitter. Maybe that's just a bunch of bots at this point, because I can't comprehend how someone can see that. You saw that as an American citizen. You saw that as someone like you who, quote unquote, is an American citizen, born of this land, and everything in their life is from this land. And you saw them get picked up, and you say, I voted for this. Like I don't understand that. And I don't know if you have any input as to how someone can get to that place, to a point that, which I think you've touched on, because I think it's a whole like supremacy idea, where you have a leader who's doing certain things and now you're empowered to do so, because that has been within you for so long, and maybe they've just been shoved down with their hatred for so long, and now they're like, oh, America is so back. That's kind of like the terms that I hear. America is so back. Yep. Like, I voted for this. But then I ask myself, why would you vote for this? And it's usually just, the response is just around hate. Yeah. So, like, what can we do when hate is so high, in a time that, we're so connected that you cannot escape from it? No matter where you go, there is hate today. What can one do to make sure that they don't get consumed by that?
Oof.
I know, I kind of give you a lot.
That was a lot. That was a lot. No, and as you were talking, I was thinking about something that we talked about before, which is oftentimes if it isn't happening to them, it's not happening at all. So collectively as a country, it feels like our capacity for empathy has dwindled. Right. And those who carry empathy are very much experiencing empathy fatigue, because they're carrying the weight of what you're talking about. They see women like that. I saw a clip yesterday of a protest on a bridge in Ohio and ICE. Did you see that?
Yeah, I just saw that this morning, actually.
Yeah.
That was brutal.
Yeah. Yep.
In broad daylight, too.
Broad daylight. I mean, the guy was punched in the face, the neck.
And then the girl came trying to separate them and literally hit her with a gun. Yep. I was like, what is going on? Yep.
And people make choices in those moments of, like, do I step in? Do I intercede? Is this, or do I look away? Right. And I also think about, I lived in Moldova for a year. I went there for a few months, and then I returned after college graduation and taught English. And many of the teachers that I worked with shared stories with me very similar to yours, that family members disappeared during the Soviet Union. They tried to baptize their child in secret. Father disappeared, probably sent to a gulag, not really sure, never saw that family member again. Each teacher had an experience that they shared. And what that has created in that society today is a society of fear, a society of, like, the police still largely operated that way. I was approached by military in the market who tried to arrest me for speaking English in a market in Moldova.
That's wild.
They had like AK-47s. They were like, we're detaining you.
Right.
And I said, no, you're not. And luckily, one of my students worked at the embassy, and I called the embassy. And but we shouldn't have to have those experiences to understand how things are happening in our country right now. We shouldn't have to be the one with the baby pulled out of our arms while we're being put into a car to understand what is happening with people right now. Yeah. And so I think it's the lack of empathy and it's the lack of people's ability to see how very close they are to having that happen to them.
Right.
Because it's not going to stop.
Yeah, no, like to your point, that was a sheriff that, came out, and now he's like protecting like immigrants because, during the flood, like the
in
Mexican
Texas.
firefighters came and they actually saved his family.
Yeah.
And now he came out and
how about that?
Yeah. Like, whoa.
Yeah.
Now we should protect immigrants. But and then to me, what I have to say to that guy is like, it doesn't have to happen to us for us to care.
Yep.
At the end of the day, we are all humans, and just democracy as a whole is strongest when we give a damn about one another. That's what democracy is in the simplest form, is making sure we're looking out for one another to make sure that the systems that are designed don't end up oppressing our neighbors. And I think I'm seeing that in America, and especially this whole theme of this conversation, that's why I want to talk about habeas corpus, is because we're seeing that people only care when it happens to them. Yeah. And again, democracy is strongest when we stand for one another, especially rights like habeas corpus. Yep. If we can't agree on that, then we're lost.
That's right. And I would say democracy is recognizing when one person experiences a removal of their rights, we all experience a removal of our rights.
Right.
So when one press member is silenced and removed, all of our rights of freedom of press and speech are now at threat. And I mean, Stephen Colbert, we're not even talking about how the press has been after he spoke out about Paramount taking whatever the $16 million or paying
$15 million bribe. He called it a bribe. And then the following episode was like, well, I didn't want to share this, but the show is ending.
That's right.
He didn't even sugarcoat. That's how much it must have gotten very intense. So we're definitely in a very scary times right now.
And to go back to your question of how do we have conversations with people about this? I have written many, many pages in my personal notebook this quote from James Baldwin. We can disagree and still love each other unless your disagreement is rooted in my oppression and denial of my humanity and right to exist. And I think that, for me, is what encapsulates where we are right now, because how do we have conversations with people who are like, I'm fine with these people.
I voted for this.
Yeah, I'm fine with them no longer being considered humans by constitutional right. I'm fine with them being sent to alligator Alcatraz. Yeah. And how do you have a conversation with someone who can say that with a straight face?
Right. I know it's a question that we have to come back and dissect because we've definitely ran out of time. Yeah. I just realized it's been an hour.
That's amazing.
This is amazing. Yeah. And I have so much to go into. Yep. But just to conclude, habeas corpus is your right as an American or any human that lives in America. It's your right. Again, it's your right. So remember that. Don't let it go. And don't let your neighbor lose that right, because the moment that happens, guess who's next? They're going to run out of someone to attack. Yeah. And they have a goal. They have a KPI of hate.
Yeah.
I call.
Wow.